Hello. So, welcome to my class. My name is Mr. Moon, and this is the very first day of school. And so, what I have is a little introductory video for you about what we're going to learn. So, this year in seventh grade world history, or what you will learn about this year. So, this class is a medieval world history class, which means we study the Middle Ages. The word medieval is a Latin word and it basically just means the middle. So, in history, every year in school, you study a different time period, and we get to study about the Middle Ages, the medieval world, which is really, really an interesting time period. I really like it. People ask me, don't you get bored? And I say, no, I don't. So, why is it called the Middle Ages? Well, when we look at recorded history, there's the ancient world, which began way back in the Middle East and like places like Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, when they learned how to create a writing system. And today we live in the modern world. And in the middle is the Middle Ages, the medieval world. So that's why it's called the Middle Ages or the medieval world, because it's in the middle. So the Middle Ages begins when Rome became an empire. In the year 27 BC, that guy in that statue right there, Caesar Augustus, Octavian also, as he was known, sort of became the leader of Rome. Rome had been a republic before that, it had been a kingdom before that. But when he took over, he became the one person with all of the power. And so he was called the Imperator, which is where we get the name emperor from, or empire. So all hail Caesar. And if you're wondering why there's a naked baby hanging on his leg, I will explain that later this year. It actually is a funny story and it makes sense. So that's when the Middle Ages begins in the year 27 BC. And why? Because we say so. Historians have looked back and we said, well, this is a good time period. This is a good place to begin this new period. When did it end? Well, it ended when the Roman Empire collapsed. So about 500 years later, in 476 AD, Rome came to an end. Rome as an empire. I mean, you can still go to the city of Rome. In that photo, that is the area that was called the Forum. And that sort of building on the right-hand side, you see that only the front columns are up. That was the Temple of Saturn. And inside of that, that was their treasury. So that was like the piggy bank, so to speak, for the Roman Empire. So today, if you go to Rome, you can walk around and see all this stuff, and it doesn't cost any money to walk around and see it all. It's pretty neat. So there you go. The Middle Ages begins with the with Rome becoming an empire, and it ends with the end of the Roman Empire. So that's the time period we were talking about. Now, remember, this is also world history. Okay, and we are going to be studying places all around the world. So we will. The first subject area we study is world geography. Now we won't start geography till next week at the earliest. The first couple of days is sort of a get to know you, get to know me kind of activity, or activities, I should say. So anyway, we will learn about geography, the continents, oceans, things like that, because we're talking about places all around the world all year long. So we need to be familiar with that. We will study medieval China. Maybe some of you learned about ancient China last year in sixth grade. Uh, but when we think of China, we think of the Great Wall of China, we think about the terracotta warriors, and we should think about a civilization that was incredibly advanced, very, very sophisticated. The inventions that they created, the compass, paper, gunpowder, rockets, uh, all kinds of amazing inventions come to us from China. So we will study medieval China. We will also study about the Mongols. The Mongols lived near China, but they are not Chinese, they're Mongols. And the guy at the top right-hand corner there is Genghis Khan, and he is the founder of the Mongol Empire. Okay, and what's interesting about the Mongol Empire is that during this time period, they were the biggest empire on earth, and in fact, if we look at their empire as one single piece of land, it's the biggest contiguous land empire in human history. It didn't last very long, though. It lasted less than 100 years. It was sort of like a big fire catching, and it burns up really quickly. But the Mongols are important to us. We will study medieval Japan. Uh, America and Japan have a very interesting history. A long time ago, we were the first foreign country to go to Japan in the mid 1800s, and we said to the people of Japan, basically, "Hey, we want to do business. We want to trade with you." Japan didn't want to, but they kind of had to. And for a long time, America and Japan were very, very good friends. When we think of medieval Japan, we think of samurai warriors. We would think about styles of Buddhism, such as Zen. The castle, that is a castle in the center. In the upper left-hand corner, that is called the Torii Gate, and that is a gateway for the sacred spirits of the Japanese religion called Shinto. And of course, we think about uh, people eating, chopsticks. In the bottom right, those are women who are preparing tea for a special ceremony called the tea ceremony. Uh, we have a very long relationship with Japan, and even still today we do. We will study medieval India. India is the second largest country in the world by population. China has the largest population of any country in the world, but India is closing in. And in maybe only 5 or 6 years, India will become the most populated country on earth. That is where the Buddha comes from. That is where the religion of Hinduism comes from. The building there is the Taj Mahal, considered to be one of the great buildings of all human history. A couple other things we would think about when we think about India would be numbers. Yes, the numbers we use: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 0 back again. So that makes the 10. Those numbers came from India. So one of India's really great achievements and gifts to the world was a working system of mathematics that works really, really well. Another gift that India gave to the world is chess. It actually comes from China. India. It's about 1,300 years old. Although when we look at chess pieces, we see the Europeanized version of it. But nonetheless, chess did come from India. Now we will study a lot about religions this year. And I want to assure everybody that when we study religion, we're not studying a religion that it's the truth, it's the only one. We are just talking about what do these people believe. The Middle East, the area of the world right there, because it's kind of in the middle between Europe, Asia, and Africa, we refer to as the Middle East. And the Middle East area is where the three monotheistic religions come from. Those are religions that believe in the idea that there is only a single God. And of course, if you look at the top, we would see the crucifix for Christianity, we would see the Star of David for Judaism, and on the far right, the crescent moon for Islam. All three of these religions come from the Middle East, and they are very closely intertwined. Probably the single most important city in this region because of religion is Jerusalem. The bottom left-hand corner photo you see there, that is the city of Jerusalem. So we will learn about those religions and how they relate to each other and how they interact. We will study about the Islamic Empire. Now, you might say, is that an empire about religion? Well, not really. It's an empire like any other empire that has ever existed in human history. But because the people who controlled it were Muslims, we refer to it as the Islamic Empire. And as you can see, the Islamic Empire was pretty large, stretching all the way from the border of India all the way to Iberia. Now, if you look in that, oops, I don't want that. You see this round, darn it, you see that round red circle surrounding that area called Iberia? Well, we don't call it Iberia much. That is the peninsula where you would find Spain and Portugal. So for those of you out there who are listening to this, if you have any family ancestry that goes back to Portugal or Spain, any Hispanic ancestry, guess what? About 1,000 years ago, your medieval ancestors lived in the Islamic Empire. Pretty neat stuff, I think. Ah, we will also study sub-Saharan West Africa. Sub-Saharan means the area south of the Sahara Desert, which is the largest desert in the world. The Sahara Desert is about the same size as the United States. So if you can imagine getting on a camel and riding all the way from Los Angeles to New York City, and it's nothing but desert the whole entire way, that's how big we're talking about. And of course, camels, being perfect for this type of terrain, are what helped traders. The civilizations that we see there listed called Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, all of those were trade empires in and around this area called sub-Saharan West Africa. If you look on the map, you'll see one of the cities sort of right here called Timbuktu. Timbuktu was an amazing city. At one time, it was the world's richest, maybe the world's richest city because of trade going back and forth across the Sahara Desert. And interestingly enough, it was all about salt and gold. Yes, salt and gold. Now, we all know why gold is, people like gold, but salt was so important for people's lives back then, and it still is today, because you have to add it to your food to survive. That salt was as valuable as gold. So if you can imagine, if you went back to Timbuktu 1,000 years ago and you had a pound of salt, it would be worth the same thing as a pound of gold. It's really amazing. I have a really neat movie we'll get to watch when we watch about Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. We will talk about the collapse of the Roman Empire. Because the Roman Empire is an ancient empire, it starts in the ancient world. It's the collapse of the Roman Empire that is the beginning of the Middle Ages. So when we look at Rome, we're going to look at okay, what happened? How did Rome go from being this incredible, powerful, intelligent, sophisticated civilization, this empire, and what happened to it? How did it collapse? I mean, look at that building on the left there. That is on the bottom left. That is the Colosseum, a sporting stadium that could hold 50,000 people for events such as fights, like gladiator matches. You see the chariot racing there. They had a different arena for that. It was called the Circus Maximus. And the Circus Maximus was sort of like a racetrack for chariot racing, and it could hold maybe as many as 200,000 people. Imagine that, 200,000 people. The upper right is a really special building. It is called the Pantheon, and it was built to honor the Roman gods. Okay, and that's what Pantheon means, the place to honor all the gods. It is almost 1,800, 1,900 years old. It's one of the oldest buildings in the world, and it still is standing. It is still there. When the Romans became Christians, the emperor turned it into a church, and so it was preserved over the years. So that's kind of another neat thing to think about. To think about that, how good they were at building. But they built something, a dome out of concrete, and it's still there almost 2,000 years later. That's an amazing thing. Our engineering, military organization. So we will study about the collapse of the Roman Empire. We will talk about the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire is an empire that came along right after the Roman Empire, and they were very similar. In fact, they thought of themselves as Romans, although the Byzantine Empire was not headquartered in Rome. It was actually headquartered in a place called Constantinople, which on the map is right here. Now, this building up there in the upper right is called the Hagia Sophia. Now, check this out. This is a building that is over about 1,500 years, almost 1,500 years old. When it was built, it was the biggest building on Earth. Think about that, the biggest building on Earth. And it took the rest of the world 800 years to build something bigger than that. Think about that, 800 years. Today, it is in the modern country of Turkey, and it is used today as an Islamic mosque. But if you go in, the artwork up in the dome and on the arches is still Christian art. So it's a neat place to go and see. Oh, and there's even, this is true, there's even Viking graffiti. A Viking made his way all the way there and carved his name in the floor. I'll show that to you later this year. We will talk about Christianity. Christianity is really, really important. Whether you believe in it or not isn't the point. Christianity is a powerful force in the world that we live in. And how did Christianity go from a tiny little religion in the little area inside the Roman Empire to being spread all over the world? So that's an important part of world history, and it's an important part of how we live our lives today, and even to a degree, why we live where we do today. So we will talk about the rise and spread of Christianity. We will talk about feudal Europe, medieval Europe. We think about feudal Europe, we think about knights and castles, and kings and queens. Very much kind of Disney, right? Our idea of the Middle Ages. Maybe it's not the most accurate, though. The truth is, most of the people who lived in the Middle Ages did not live in castles. They were not kings or princesses. They were not medieval warriors, no matter what Disney movies tell you. Most people were peasants. So the vast majority of us, our ancestors who lived through this time period, were peasants. They didn't own the land. They were bossed around by the rich people, and they basically had really, really tough lives. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to be honest when we look at history, and we're going to sort of de-Disneyfy it. At the end of the Middle Ages, we will study the Renaissance. This is called the rebirth of culture in Europe. Now, I put the word rebirth in quotes because it's really, culture. There was still culture in the world, but finally, after the collapse of the Roman Empire, about 1,000 years go by, and finally they begin to catch back up with things like artwork. So people like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, some of the Ninja Turtles lived during that time period. Shakespeare, the writer from England, lived during this time period. So the Renaissance is very important for us. So is the Reformation. Now, this is a crazy one here. This is an argument, so to speak, between groups of people in Europe who considered themselves to be Christians. On the right-hand side, we have the Pope, the leader of what we would now call the Catholic Church, the church in Europe in the Middle Ages. On the left, we see Martin Luther, a German monk. And yes, his name should look familiar because Martin Luther King Jr. is named after him. They disagreed about what it meant to be a Christian. And so the Reformation and the Counter-Reformation was this movement, this time period in the history of Europe where Christians literally, and if you look at the center picture, killed other Christians for being the wrong kind of Christian. Yes, burned alive at the stake. So that's a pretty tough time to have lived. We'll study about the scientific revolution. Science finally kind of comes back to life. People like Galileo, Copernicus, Isaac Newton, the great discoveries, the beginning of the world we live in today with science and technology takes place during this time period. The age of exploration. In the 1400s, the Europeans began to explore the world, and this is a time period that will change the world more than anything else maybe ever has in human history. People like Columbus and Magellan, and whether you like them or not, it's not the point. The discoveries they made changed the history of the world very significantly. So we would study about that. We'll study about the Enlightenment, which is a time period where philosophers, thinkers, thought about what life was like and what government should be like. You'll notice the painting at the bottom of that is the signing of our Declaration of Independence. The ideas of freedom, democracy, we the people, all of those ideas came from these people like Rousseau, Locke, Montesquieu, Voltaire. So that's important for us. We exist today in part because of them. Then we get to move to Mesoamerica, southern Mexico, Central America. We will study the Maya. Many of you have families who are from southern Mexico, and if you are the descendants of the Maya, an amazing, amazing, incredible civilization, one of the most amazing, interesting civilizations of all human history. I love when we get to learn about them. I love teaching about them. It's a very, very incredibly cool thing to learn about. We will also study about the Aztec. Now, the Aztec, unfortunately, were kind of like the Romans in Mexico. And unfortunately, they were there when the Spaniards showed up because of the age of exploration. And so, unfortunately, the Aztec Empire came to an end because of the Spaniards. The upper right there, you see a drawing of their capital city called Tenochtitlan, which we will get to learn about. And I think was maybe the most incredible city ever built in human history. Really a truly incredible place, and unfortunately destroyed by the Spaniards. And yes, both the Maya, too far, the Maya and the Aztec did practice some human sacrifice, so that's something we have to acknowledge. And we will get to learn about the Inca in South America. So the Inca will take us to South America. The Inca were like the Romans of South America. They had this amazing, amazing civilization. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the pictures, the bottom left there, of Machu Picchu. They had an emperor. The upper left, you see kind of a recreation. They had an emperor who was believed to be a god, a living god. Uh, and they were very wealthy, very powerful until the Spaniards showed up and the Spaniards conquered them. So by the end of the year, we've studied around 1,600 years worth of world history. I mean, that's an amazing, amazing amount of work to do. So what I'm going to need for you guys to do is put your thinking cap on and hold tight, because sometimes it might seem like we're going quicker than we should. To be honest, we could take almost any one of those subjects I showed you and spend an entire year on them. But instead, we've got to move pretty quickly. But again, that makes it a lot of fun, though. There's a lot of neat things we get to learn about. So it's not just history, it's us to read. Get it? Not just someone else's history, but it's our history, the history of us. Everybody listening to this video, everyone in my class, all of you, we will learn about where your ancestors came from. So when we're talking about medieval Japan, hey, if your ancestry came from Japan, it's your history. Or if it's sub-Saharan West Africa, or if it's Central Asia or Europe or Mesoamerica or South America, it's really a neat thing. We get to learn about our ancestry. All of us, we do. So I hope you've enjoyed the introduction. Basically, we are going to come to my Canvas site every day, the days that you are assigned to me. And normally we'll be doing a live Zoom video. I'll show you a slideshow. We'll talk about what the topic is for the day. I'll explain what the assignment is, and then you'll have the time to finish that. But since it's the first day and people are still picking up books and equipment, that is why I'm doing this. So for those of you, some of you, I will see you on Zoom tomorrow on Thursday. And the others, I will see you on Friday. I look forward to that. I really do enjoy this class, and I hope you all enjoy being in my class. Thank you very much. Have a great day.